So it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, our visitor tonight, Chris Zumwalt.
I'm Chris. This screen is of my backyard, and it won't make much sense right now, but I'll tell you a little bit about falconry. Federally and in New York, it's a very regulated sport, and there's to be a falconer and to get a falconry license, you have to pass a written test given by the DEC, and then you have to find somebody to sponsor you that's either a general or a master falconer for 2 years, the first 2 years that you're doing falconry at least. And then you have to build a mew, which is a place to house the bird. And there's certain specifications that the state lays out. It has to be 8 foot by 8 foot by 8 foot, have a south or east facing window, and a whole laundry list of other things. And that has to get inspected by the DEC and approved. And then once you get all that done, then you get your license in the mail and you can trap a bird. So as Anne mentioned, I was very interested in falconry when I was about 12 or 13. And I was obsessed. And this was back before, the internet had all the answers on it. So you had to call the DEC and they mailed me a packet, that had information about the test and a study guide. And I studied it and memorized everything I could. And I remember my family at the time was like, you can't build a thing like that in our backyard. That's, there's zoning laws and stuff like that. So that didn't happen. You can actually become a falconer at 14 in New York State as an apprentice. So it was a in my mind, it was a possibility. But so anyway, I got involved with the birds at T-Town from that interest. And then, went away to school and didn't really have the opportunity to do falconry until I had a job that I could have a house. So I actually bought my house because it had a yard that I could build a mew in. And so this is a playground. You can see here, it used to have a slide, and I took the slide out because I had to make enough space for an 8 by 8 by 8 mew. And at this time, when I started, I had to level the ground, which it looks pretty level, but you'd be surprised at, how unlevel that ground actually is. So I had to do a lot of that first. I wanted to get in, this was about July, and I wanted to get everything done in time for the trapping season in September. So sometimes it takes the state a little while to come and inspect. Of course, when I called them, they were like, "Oh, we can be there next week." And I was like, I'm not ready next week. You can come in a month. But then, as I started building things, I was like, ooh, this is taking a lot more time than I thought. And you can see, during the whole process of me building the mew, I made a friend. And this is my groundhog friend that would watch me sweating, in the summer, trying to build things and getting all cut up and things like that. And you can see this is I was building the foundation of the mew, and it has this hardware cloth on it. And I forgot how much I hate hardware cloth. And then, this hardware cloth has to go all across the bottom of the mew so that nothing can dig its way in and get to the bird. And, you want that, like, you think like, well, you have a red-tailed hawk, what could get in? And there's a lot of things that could get in that could hurt the hawk. A raccoon will certainly kill a bird. But even smaller things, like you don't even really want mice getting in there. And that sounds silly, but if you live in a residential area, you don't know what your neighbor is doing. If they're putting out poison for the mice, and you don't want your bird eating that because it'll kill them. So there's reasons for some of the rules that people think are silly, when building the mew. So the rest of the mew, I had built the foundation, but the rest of it, I ordered, there's a falconer in Pennsylvania, Mike Dupuy, and he actually has a aluminum, kind of like a prefab mew. But of course I live on a road that they wouldn't ship it to, because it's like a freight delivery. So I rented a U-Haul and I drove out like 8 hours to rural Pennsylvania and picked up, you can see, this is the disassembled mew in the back of the U-Haul, and to build the rest of it. So this is like, my neighbors would drive by and be like, what is she doing? And one thought I was getting chickens, and I don't know what you get for chickens, but I don't think it would be this tall. So anyway, this is the back of me. You can see the foundation I finally got, down there. And it's coming together. These bars, you want the bars are vertical because the bird is always looking for something to perch on. So if they see, if you had horizontal bars, and this becomes a problem on the inside too, even these little things, if the bird is what we call free lofted, or just let to fly free, which you don't really tend to do with a new bird. But the bird will try to grab on here, because it sees it and sees a horizontal line, it thinks it can perch. So that's why you want, things in falconry, they look like these giant, literally like raptor cages. And that's the reason for that. And then you have, the other part of the state requirement is that you have a weathering area for the bird. And that's a place you can put the bird outside in the weather, literally. And it's got to be protected because you don't want somebody's dog running up to your bird that's tethered and, getting at it or anything like that. And so I put my weathering area on the front of the mew just so that it could act as a double door, which is another requirement. So this part here, this part was probably the hardest part to do. I had this railroad tie, and the kennel, this is a dog kennel, went a little too far, but this thing was had a piece of rebar in it that I swear went to China, and it was not budging. And my dad came over and helped me out, and we sawed and hacked at this thing and then finally pulled it out of the ground, and it's never going back. So that's kind of where it's going to be. But that was a memorable part of this. And I think this is the finished product. This was right before the inspection. And so, they're going down their checklist, and the DEC was pretty happy with my mew. And then they check off that you have all the equipment too. So I have a great sponsor across the river, Mike Ottinger. He's been great over the past few years. And so he had me make some anklets, which are these things that'll end up on the bird. And these are Mew jesses. So they have a slit in them. And this is so that you can, put a swivel through and tether the bird, or, hold the bird to your hand. And you wouldn't, this is only when the bird is either in the mew or perched. You take these out and put in a different set, when they're out hunting, which I think I might have a picture of that later. So anyway, I had my stuff ready. They came, they approved me. And then I was just waiting for my license in the mail. And it finally came on, I think it was September 7th or something. And usually, so my sponsor there's a number of ways, and I have some examples here that'll come up later. There's a number of ways that you can trap a hawk. You can do roadside trapping. You can do ridge trapping. You can do what's like a Swedish goshawk trap, which I think I actually have a picture of that too, which you can just set and leave out. But my sponsor was really big into ridge trapping, which is a lot of fun. So usually the red tails aren't, moving in early September. There's not that many of them passing through. But I was excited. And so he said, well, we can go trapping tomorrow. And I said, okay. So sure enough, September 8th, we went out, and this is the ridge. So you can see pretty far. You can see miles and miles, and you can see a little bit of the trapping site here. So we're actually hiding in a blind, my sponsor, Mike, and I. And this is a pole. And on the other end of this pole down here, the trap is over here. It's off the screen here. The other end of this pole connects by a string to a little loop that's at the center of a bow net. And there's a pigeon attached to that string. So if you have two people in the blind, one person's kind of in control of the pigeon, and the other person is, pulling the trigger on the trap. So when we were up there, I was the trigger person, because, you want to trap your own hawk. And Mike was in control of the pigeon. So I think the next one, so we caught, I don't know, probably after about an hour, we had a little red tail come in, and it was a juvie. So in falconry and in New York, you can only take a first year bird out of the wild. And that's because most of those birds aren't going to make it through their first winter. So, the DEC doesn't see it as, really impacting the population. And as an apprentice, you can only have a red-tailed hawk or a kestrel. So, and, even though you can have a lot of other birds, when you become a general falconer or a master falconer, a lot of falconers go back to the red tail because they're just awesome birds. They have a relatively calm disposition. They're very trainable. They like routine. So they respond pretty well, and they just, they're good birds for falconry. But this first bird that came in, you can see, we thought, at first it had a bunch of mud on its feet. It did have a little bit of mud on its feet, but what these actually are is, this is avian pox. So it's sort of like this disease that hawks can get, and they get these big lesions on their toes and on their face too, on their cere. And so after we had, we consulted a few other people about this, and they said that, the best thing to do is to release the bird, because they'll often recover from this as long as they're able to catch food under a least stressed environment. So, obviously trapping a new bird for falconry is not a least stressed environment for the bird. So this one was released. You can see this one next to, this is my bird that we trapped. So right, like after that, I think we had a Cooper's hawk come in, and then we had, we saw this red tail flying around, and then we didn't see anything, and we're staring at the pigeon, and we get out of the tent and we're looking all over the place with binoculars. We can't see it. There's nothing in the sky. We're like, where did this bird go? And then all of a sudden, Mike yells get back in the blind. I was like, okay. So we jumped in the blind, and my bird, whose name is Thunder, is on the right. And she was coming right over the tree line, just kind of minding her own business. She barely even saw the pigeon, because we dove back in the blind, and, he made the pigeon flap, but she was like, oh, what's that? So she turned and went in, and we got her. And so I think, are my videos playing? Oh, no, that's not a video. Okay. This is just another view of the trap site. You can see the bow net here. And this is the string for the pigeon. This is the pox bird that looks like it wants to kill me just before I released him or her. And so then I brought Thunder home, and I took her out of all the stockings and the hoods and everything. And this was her reaction. And this kind of lasted. So I have her in a dark room, and the darkness kind of keeps them calm. They're not seeing anything threatening. So they kind of relax a bit until you walk in the room, and then they look at you like this. But so slowly what you do is you have the bird in the room, and then you'll put the bird on the glove, and you'll walk around for maybe 10, 15 minutes, put the bird back in the room, let it calm down. And, it kind of gets used to okay, all right. Cause you got to think from the bird's perspective, they've never been held by anything. So to them, getting in a trap and having a person hold them is they think they're going to die. And then they realize, oh, I'm not dying. Okay. So that's step one. And you're just you're getting them used to, in short little bursts, things without stressing them out too much. And that's called manning. And then eventually, I have, this is, you can see this is a flash on the camera, but I had a light that, this was the first time she ate off the glove. So I had some nice red meat there. And she, for a while she would, the first 2 days, I think she sort of ignored it. And then I actually had to get her to, I kind of annoyed her with it. I put it in front of her beak, and she tried to bite it. And then she tasted it, and she's like, oh, well, why am I not eating this? And then getting them, the big thing is they don't want to bend down. You're staring right at them, and they see you, even though it's dark, but they don't want to bend their head down, because, they're still in the back of their mind thinking you're going to kill them or something. So that's a big step in sort of building the trust with the bird. And then the next step is getting them to walk towards you for the food. So this is her walking, being a little pig and walking down the perch to get the nice red meat. And then the next step is getting them to hop, and you can tell she's trying to reach as far as she can without doing it. And then she finally goes. And then once you get there, it's like, okay, we're good. Then we just have to get further and further away and add more and more distractions. And so this is her in my living room, flying across the living room. And then eventually you run out of living room, so you have to go outside. And that's how you discover that soccer practice starts at 8 a.m., which I thought was pretty early. So one of our early training sessions, you can see this is called a creance. So it's a very thin line, and this is a tube that has kind of sand in it. So she actually could drag this. You don't want the bird, when the bird has this much room, this whole soccer field to fly, you don't want them coming up to a short stop, because they could break a leg like that. So that's why you have something like this when you're training. They can pull it a little bit. It's going to kind of slowly slow them down. And it's a useful tool because you can see how, the bird's response. So here we're out in the daylight. She had a pretty good response. The red tails kind of are they're smart though. There's people that they get them trained in hunting in like 3 weeks. Once they know how to do this, they're like, oh, I know how to do that thing. And they kind of trick you a little bit, because then you think like, oh, they're good to go. I can take them out in the woods. And you can't take them out in the woods yet. You have to get their weight right and get them used to the routine. So then this is the next step. This is her lure, and it's a dog toy. It's a pig, and she loves it more than anything in the world. And so this was one of the first times I had her on the lure, and I fed her a whole entire quail on it. So you get them to, like, every time they see the lure, they're going to get a big reward. And I was doing this quail thing, and then but the problem with feeding her an entire quail is it keeps her weight up for a couple of days. And so then, my sponsor kind of told me a little trick that it's not so much how much the bird eats that gets them kind of fixated on something. It's more about how long it takes them to eat. And so then we kind of replaced the quail with a chicken drumstick that I had drilled a hole in, and it just took most of the meat off, and she'll pick that thing clean and even eat the bone, but it'll take her a really long time to do it. And they remember that because they're standing on that thing for, 20 minutes, trying to get all the meat off it. And so you really want them to, this is sort of like your, you can use the lure in a couple ways. It's sort of like this is my big reward. You can use it at the end of the hunt. Some people give the bird the lure at the end of the hunt. I tend to do that because it brings them back. Then she follows me back to the car because she knows she's going to get the lure. So that routine has come in very handy. But you could also use the lure for, emergencies only, too. So you could do it both ways, but it's an invaluable tool. If they don't come to the glove, you want them to come to the lure. And so this is a receiver. And so when you're out flying the bird, you want to keep track of your bird. And there's a couple, I think I have a picture of this later, but I have a GPS transmitter on her. The GPS is much more expensive. And it's not like how you think, I can go home on my computer and look at where my bird is. You still have to, it still goes through a radio signal. So you have, they test these things out in places like Utah, and they say you can find your bird from 40 miles away. And you get here with all these mountains, and you're like, okay, I can get about a mile, and that's it. So there is a limit to it, but there's tricks if you really lose the bird. But usually, I think I have spent this did come in handy on our first free flight, which I'll talk about next. But most of the time I'm pulling this thing out because the transmitter fell off the bird, and I'm trying to find the transmitter. and usually I've already gone home when this happens, so I have to come back and find the transmitter because I keep forgetting to check the bird. But anyway, what this thing is, it looks sort of like a gun, so you have to kind of be careful who's watching you pull this thing out. But this is the frequency. This is a UHF receiver, so the transmitter on the bird is putting out a pulse every so often, and you can see that. I think I can turn the sound on. And you can hear this. You can hear that little beeping. So the stronger that is, you're pointed in the right direction. And so what you often have to do is walk around to a few different spots and sort of triangulate until you get close. And then you can change these settings. This is set to the near setting because I think I just put the transmitter in the house. But if the bird's far away and then this is getting really loud, you turn it down to medium and you're closer. So it's sort of like a little, it's kind of fun when you're not actually looking for something and you're just doing it for fun. And so this was our first free flight or hunt, and it was at Fawnstock, and it was probably not the best choice of places, but it was very close to me. So, and I thought there were a lot of squirrels there. So, but in hindsight, there's also a lot of park. So there's places the bird could get to where there's no road that you could, drive and point your telemetry at. So, in hindsight, it's probably not the best spot for a good first hunt, but we had so my sponsor came that day, and we went out and he brought a pigeon in a harness just in case. And, we turned the bird loose, and I think this was like the first thing she landed on. She's just kind of standing there like, what are we doing? What's this game? But she's starting to look around, and she went after a couple chipmunks, a squirrel, and we were having a really good time. And she didn't catch anything. She got fur on one squirrel. But then, we were out there for like 2 hours, and that was probably a little too long for a first flight because they don't actually know the routine. They're just like, okay, what are we doing out here? I know you have food sometimes. And so she kind of went up one of those hills, and I couldn't see it. It's usually you can't see the bird and you're looking and you just can't, they're right there. But then, she wasn't responding. So I pulled out the receiver, and we were walking through the woods. She was getting farther and farther away. So then, my sponsor was like, oh, we got to go, get back. We got to get in the car. So we got in the car and we went down a road, and I had the receiver. This is actually before that happened. So that's Mike. He's my sponsor. He's, on the road. This is Thunder, on the side of the road in Fawnstock. I think we had just chased after a chipmunk or something, but anyway, so we had to drive a little ways, pull out the receiver. And then I had, kept putting the settings down. You saw the settings. And finally I got it to the near setting. We were just driving along this road at the way she went. And then, so we pulled over the car, and I knew just from practicing, I'm like, if I'm on the near setting, she's pretty close. And so we got out of the car and heard bells. And I pulled out the lure, and she came right down. And this was her looking totally innocent after that whole thing. And you can see this is the little transmitter that helped us find her right there. And then, so in case you were wondering about the groundhog, he was still alive and well. I don't know where he is now. This is my cat, but he's still alive and well and draining my bird feeder of that hot bird seed that squirrels aren't supposed to eat. But I guess they don't, I guess they're not really doing that like taxonomically when they say that. Anyway, so this is actually, so every year the New York State Falconery Association has a meet, and the past few years it's been in Oneonta because it was mostly because it was such a good site with the hotel. But you can see this here is this is a couple Harris hawks, and they're on a lure machine. And so somebody had set this up just for fun. And so basically the machine, people use this for dog training all the time. And so it can be fun for, if you're just looking to exercise a bird, when they're not hunting or before hunting season or anything like that. But it's got this long string and it goes all the way around, and there's a machine pulling, and I think they tried tying a rabbit to it, but the rabbit kind of fell apart because they do that. And so they tied a squirrel on, and that worked a lot better. But you can see these Harris hawks just, there's one going after it, and then the other one decides to join in. And then they come up to these guys taking pictures, and they were like, oh, okay, no. But then eventually they did catch it. So they got that. So this is just another example of trapping. We went out to the black dirt, and we were looking for kestrels. And so this is another way to catch birds. And you basically, what you do is you see the bird, and people do this with red tails too. And you have it's like a little cage, and people put a gerbil in it, or a parakeet in it, or the animal doesn't get hurt, the bait animal. It's like, totally inside hardware cloth. And, people have different theories about, what the best bait animal is. Some people, like my sponsor, say, oh, wild mice, because, they just move around, a lot differently than the mice at the pet store. And I know one person that uses a gerbil and a starling in the trap, and that like seems to work every time because there's just so much activity in there. And it has the cage has a bunch of little nooses on it. And so what you do is you find a bird sitting on a wire, sitting on a tree, and you drive up and you kind of slowly drop this trap out on the side, off the road. And then you drive away and you watch from a distance and you wait. And usually, like if the bird sees it, they'll go down and grab it. And then they get stuck in these nooses. And then you can go retrieve the bird and either, take it as your falconry bird or, release it. This one we ended up releasing because this ended up being an adult and not what we call a passage bird or a bird. So this is me just releasing that guy back up on the wire. And he's right back to hunting like nothing happened. So that same day, I hadn't we'd gone out on a couple free flights and hunting, but we hadn't, I hadn't caught a squirrel or anything with the bird. And so I went out, Mike took me out to some of his hunting spots and we got here, and I know all you birders can see this bird in the tree. I think it's hard to see, but she's right here and she's actually got a squirrel in the top of that tree. So this was her first catch. And she kind of grabbed it. Once she got untangled, she sort of came down at an angle. She was kind of like, it was like she was trying to carry it a little bit, ended up on this tree right here, which is kind of a cool picture. And then eventually on the ground where I could trade her off it. She was this one, the first couple squirrels, except not this first squirrel, because there was just kind of like too much going on at the time. So I did not let her eat the squirrel. I traded her off for it. And the first couple of squirrels I did, I think I have a picture of this later. I let her eat them because you'll see. But this is afterwards. I actually never use a hood with the bird except for in this picture, just because I wanted to save my fingers. This hood is actually a little too big, and yeah. So, but the hood can be a very useful tool. I didn't use it with her, and she's not really trained well to it, and we get by pretty well without it. So I don't use it with her. But that's our first squirrel. I thought the colors were kind of cool. I don't know. Maybe like I didn't really look at squirrels so closely before. They're just kind of like. But this one had, I don't know, it was pretty colors and stuff. So he went in the freezer and we food. This is a video. You'll see Thunder's up here. This is on one of our hunts. I just call it. This was one of the first times I was brave enough to take video while I was out there. Because usually you're just so nervous, especially at the beginning, you're just so nervous. You're like, you're trying to turn around looking for the bird every 5 seconds. And you're not even looking for squirrels. You're just hoping the bird sees a squirrel and that she'll come back, by the time you get done with the hunt. So trying to take video was out of the question for a while. And I didn't have a GoPro or anything like that in the beginning. But this is just a kind of cool, you can see how high up she is, and she comes right down. And then I think I'm whistling. That's usually the signal to come. So. And she's got a pretty good response there. So then that tells me she's at a pretty good weight because she's responding pretty well. So this picture is the first time she saw snow. And so this was actually, these two pictures are a little out of order. So she did this first, landing in the snow, and then decided she did not like that. So she was going to climb up my arm and just stand and stare at it, from up higher, which actually it took us quite a while to get over the snow thing. This year she's been great in it. She'll fly down into it. She'll eat in it. She'll take a squirrel in it. So that I'm grateful for. But last year she was being a little brat about it still. So this was we didn't have much, like we were, I spent some time we were chasing squirrels and she wasn't really connecting. And so then my sponsor had me, he said, I think he came out and watched and he was like, I think you need to drop her weight like a half an ounce and try that. And sure enough, I dropped her weight a half an ounce and she really started, flying hard and responding better. And so this was one of December, things started to really pick up and she started catching. So this is one of the squirrels she caught back then. And you can see by then I had the GPS transmitter on her, because that made me feel so much. It's so much better when you can, you're not like panicking, like, oh, do I need to pull out the receiver? You can just pull out the phone and say, oh, the bird's like 200 feet away. She's not even that far away. You don't have to panic. Or the opposite, like, why is she 1,000 feet away? That too. But anyway, so this, so a squirrel, if you haven't like really felt them or tried to open one, they're very hard to open. Their hide is just so thick. It's so thick that most of the time the bird doesn't even puncture it when she catches the squirrel. She's squeezing the head real hard, and usually they go in through the eye and stuff. So this I actually caused this. So what happens? I should back up a little bit. So usually the bird catches the squirrel and has got it. She's holding it. Sometimes they're dead, but most oftentimes they're not. And because their hide is so thick, you want to get in there quickly and sort of end the torture, so to speak, because the bird will just start eating the squirrel. Like she'll go through the eyeball. It's kind of gruesome and torturous for the squirrel. So with the squirrel, some people use spikes and they quickly dispatch the squirrel. I personally just squeeze the squirrel. And that usually ends things pretty quickly. And I don't feel great about that. It's not my favorite part of falconry, but it is a part of it. So these first couple squirrels, I did open up for her so that she could just start eating them. And, then it makes it all like she gets the reward, of that. But the other thing that this did was it sort of like naturally led to the trade-off. So she starts eating the squirrel, and it's really tough to eat. So she's eating and eating and eating. And then eventually, like, I'm sitting there and she kind of like looks at me like, well, what do you have? Like, do you have something? You always have stuff that's easy to eat. So then it's sort of like, then you, in the beginning, I would cover the squirrel with something like a camouflage cloth, and I would put a piece of meat next to her, and she'd kind of go off and get the meat. And then eventually I didn't even need the camouflage. Like now she has the squirrel, and once she knows it's dead, she's looking at me like, where's my chicken? So the good part about that too is you can catch game, and then you can trade the bird off for a smaller piece of meat, and then you can keep going. So you could put 2 or 3 squirrels in the bag, or a squirrel and 2 a rabbit, or if you're having a good day. Things like that. So that's sort of how that goes. So this, I have a picture of her. This is just on the scale. So this is weighing the bird is very important in falconry. And it's not a static thing. There's not like, oh, my bird is like right here, she's 39.5 ounces. And that was around what I was flying her the first season. This season, I've been flying her at 41.5, and she's doing fantastic. So, things change, and like they're, it has a lot to do with like how much exercise, how often are you flying the bird? Or do they have a lot of muscle? Are they burning up a lot of calories? So the bird, like, you could pretty much take your hawk out on a 12-degree day and get a good response, almost at any weight, I would say. Like you would be hard pressed to find a weight that they wouldn't respond well at 12 degrees. But you get into like, once it gets I find mostly the above freezing, that's when they're kind of like, oh, okay, it's not so, I could catch that squirrel or not. So you tend to do things, you want to get the weight right though. Like a lot of times the hawk will respond because it's routine, but if they're not, but then if something comes up or there's a distraction, they'll be flying off or they won't come down. And, then they get in the habit of sort of being in that mental state. So if you have the bird at the right weight and they're always chasing game and they're responding to you, then it's just better all around, because they get in the habit, and that's part of the routine, and they're ready to go. And you can take them out at higher weights, and you can take them different places, and they're going to come back. So, but weighing is very important. Like, you have to know your bird's weight, because otherwise you can't change things, either about what you're doing. All right, let's see. Oh, so this was this is a little flying squirrel, and I think they're super cute. But she caught this, and she just pulled it off a tree. And there's a couple of reasons that's not so great. So she can carry it. You don't want the bird carrying the food. And also, it's like, what I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to put this little tiny thing in the freezer. It's not going to do it. So we traded her for it, and my friend put it in her pocket. And then after a couple hours, it was good as new, because even these little guys have very thick hides. So the squirrel was fine, despite looking completely squashed in some of the other pictures. But so this is a couple. Yeah, these are just some other squirrels. I think this was a good day. We caught a couple squirrels. Yeah, so this was our first double, which was, I was trying so hard to get, and I think it finally happened in like March of the first year. So she'll catch one squirrel, I trade her off, and then we keep going. She catches another, and so that's like, you could do this. There's people that have that are much better falconers than me, that have they'll show the back of their truck, and there'll be like 5 rabbits, and they'll have their bird on it, and it's like, okay, well, if I could find 5 rabbits, that would even be exciting. But so usually we've only really ever done it. We've done doubles, but not triples yet. I almost had a triple once, and I got so obsessed with it that I went back to the spot. It was like 4 hours away, and there was nothing there except for a chipmunk the next time. So, and this was the end of our first season. This was actually our last hunt, I think. And so I gave her an entire quail, just to start the fattening process. So you can see her just ripping it apart gleefully. So then we go into the molt. So this is, falconry season ends March 31st. And so then you put, people do a couple things. Some people release the bird. And then there's people that only take a bird for one season, and then release it, and then catch another one the next season. My sponsor likes keeping them, because he says they get better, you get better. And I think that is true for especially for an apprentice. Like, I feel like I learned a lot from keeping the bird, because she knows the routine. She's like, okay, we go out, we chase things, and then I come back to the car and I get a reward. And then you're like, okay, once you get that, then you can start going new places. You get more comfortable. You can go for longer. You can take more people. There's a lot you can do then at that point. So this is her. So during the molt, we pretty much just she's eating all kinds of things, and this is me trying to entertain her, which I don't know if she was entertained, but she's able to I've tried 2 of these things inside of each other, and she's able to pull them out in 5 seconds now, if I give her this. But anyway, this is just her. We're hanging out, fattening her up, because growing a whole new set of feathers requires a lot of energy. And this is her enjoying the water. And she's actually, if you watch her, she's actually trying to chase her shadow, which is until I catch her. And then, and it's like she's embarrassed for being a dork, but I'm gonna get it. Oh, I missed it. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, hi. So she actually she does enjoy the bath pan in the summer. So those were the first couple feathers that fell out. I think there's some the inner primaries or the secondaries, I'm not sure. And then some body feathers. And so this was her tail. This was a pre-new feather coming in. And actually one of her deck feathers is missing because a squirrel bit it off. And then there's just a little stub left of it. And I was waiting for that little stub to fall out, because I'm like, yay, she'll have a full tail again. But anyway, so this is the very first little red tail feather coming in. And then you can see it's getting bigger. And then now she's got a couple more. And now she looks like she was hit by a bus. And then getting a little bit, there's still a couple coming in here. And this is over the course of months. This is probably from, I think the first tail feather fell out in May. And then this is like end of July, maybe even August. And then there's her with her new tail, her new plumage for the second year. So this is our second year. You know, I went trapping again. This is just a nice Cooper's hawk we caught ridge trapping. And then we also caught, I was trying to get a video of the bird coming in. So you can see, like here, you can see the net though. So I was trying to get a video of the bird coming in, and usually the person has the pigeon right centered, but this time, you know, it was actually an apprentice in the other tent. They were trying to trap this guy's his first bird. So
Chris, I just want to make a quick message for folks. I know some of you need to leave at 8. I think Chris will be continuing just a few more minutes, and then we'll do Q&A. And I know many of you are really very much engrossed in what you're hearing, so not worried about that, because a lot of you have stayed. We're up to 94 people. So yeah, thank you if you need to leave, and otherwise stay with us and we'll enjoy some more images and stories from Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. Okay, so you can see the bird being dragged in, and then the bow net goes over. So that's the ridge trap that I was talking about earlier. And this was actually that bird that came out of it. Oops. That's that bird that came out of the trap, which is just a nice picture of that bird. Nice big feet. This is Thunder again. This was one of our early hunts. And last year there were very few squirrels, but she found a vole, and this is this like ginormous vole. And of course, like she can wolf them down in like 5 seconds. So usually and she's done this too, like whenever she finds a vole, like I'll get there and she'll have just finished swallowing it. And then she looks at me like, where's my chicken? And I'm like, well, you ate it. That's, you know, you don't trade for nothing. But anyway, this was at the end of our hunt. So she was getting chicken then. But you can see her new feathers too. So I'm going to pause it and rewind it. So this is one of our hunts. This is when I started carrying a GoPro, and it's actually harder to get a good video than you think. You think, oh, I just have this thing stuck to my head, but then you find out it's like angled wrong, or you didn't have it turned on, and like, you know, you're just recording people talking. But anyway, so there's a squirrel in this tree, and we are yelling. I'm going to turn this. Actually, no, I think there's cursing, so I'm not going to turn the sound on this one. But the squirrel is running, and you can see the squirrel bail out, and then the bird lands on top of it. And then, so we got this one. I don't know if anybody wants me to play that again, but so squirrel is jumping, bailing out of the tree. The bird dives down and lands on it. And then we got our squirrel. So that's that one. This is one she didn't catch, but I just wanted to show you, like, this is the kind of stuff you walk through in falconry, because you're trying to get the animal. There's the squirrel up there. It's in this tree. And then, oh, she's going down. She got caught in the brush there and didn't get this one. But this is all, you know, Japanese barberry, multiflora rose, things that are ripping into our legs and stuff. And this is more that so there were so few squirrels last year that we were trying to get a rabbit out of this. And you can see her do that little wing over. And like, often if you watch the bird, you know where the stuff, you know, she's saying like, hey, there's something in here, you know, and usually it's either, you know, in this case, it was probably a rabbit. But that's a good sign. And then sometimes when there's no squirrels, she's going to take my hat. They do get frustrated. And so this particular day, there were no squirrels, and she got mad at me because it wasn't making squirrels happen, and took my hat and wanted to trade for it. And so I did not trade her for it. I said, I will just walk away and you can have my hat. This is one of the few squirrels we caught last year. I think it was right before the snow in February, but very skinny. You can see it's like missing fur. The squirrel wasn't in good shape. Very last day of the season last year, we caught a squirrel. So that was great. It was March 31st. So this is her last squirrel that season. But I have a couple of hunting videos, but you can see how much her plumage has changed. She's gotten a lot darker. She still has a lot of people's, the birds, their eyes changed the second year. Her eyes are still pretty light. And this is another trap. I had won this trap at the falconry meet and put it in my backyard, and we caught a Cooper's hawk. So anyway, but this is another kind of trap you can use. But I have this is squirrels from this year. This picture came out particularly well. But I think the next are just a series of short hunting videos. And then we should be pretty done. I'm going to turn the sound on this one. I'm going to try to turn the sound on. So I call the bird. She's way across the street here. No shit. And you can see her coming in and just kind of like weaving through the trees. And
I know you're hungry.
She has fun. Kind of coming real close to people. This is probably the best video I'll ever get. So you'll hear us. Well, actually, I don't know if I even had time to yell in this one, but the game call that the bird knows is you yell ho ho ho. It sounds ridiculous, but you will do it because you want the bird to see the squirrel, and you get excited too. So she knows that, hey, if you're yelling ho ho ho, you see a squirrel, and she needs to get over there. So I think you'll hear us. Yell, and then she dies down. Shit. So it never happens when I hit a dead tree, but this dead tree in particular has given us a couple. Shit! They like it, and so this is usually what happens. So I'm telling her there's a squirrel. You can see it. It'll come. I know it's up there, and
he's up here.
I'm shooting a bird seed and a slingshot at it to try to get it to move, but there it is. It's right on that side of the tree. She's over here. So she's heard the game call. She's coming. And I'm trying to get this thing to move. And, there she is. So it came around this side, but then it saw me. And then she can grab it right off the side of the tree. So that's been a pretty good technique that we've little teamwork there with the bird. This is one she didn't catch, but I thought it was just a cool video. The squirrel's going down the tree, and then she gets caught up in this little sapling and then goes under this log and comes out the other side, which I just thought it was a neat flight, that she did there. And then I think this next slide this is our last. So this is our squirrel from this morning that I just added in today. But actually you can see, I just thought it was a cute picture because of her face. You can see she's got one foot. She's ready for me to throw her the chicken. This is like, okay, it's time. Why are you taking pictures of me? Where's my chicken? So that's that look. But anyway, that is my show. And I guess I'll just hit the stop share here. And then I'm going to grab the bird. She's in the box behind me.
And I know you folks have some questions. We'll save time for that. So she brought Thunder inside to show on Zoom as well. So we'll do that a few moments. And as she holds, maybe we can do some questions too.
So she can actually see screens because I've showed her videos of squirrels and rabbits and she tries to eat them. So I was trying to teach her how to hunt rabbits, and I don't know if it worked, but I was showing her videos of Harris hawks going after rabbits and seeing if she'd try to do that the next time. But
oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Do you want to hold her while you talk about questions and show?
Sure.
You could. Somebody was asking, what do you do with the animals she catches?
I put them in the freezer, and usually with the squirrels, I cut the paws off and then I gut them. If I'm not being lazy, sometimes I'm lazy and I don't gut them. Supposedly I'm not very good game meat preparer, but I've been told that you've got to gut things if you want to eat them. So I have some squirrels that I've gutted in the hopes that one day I'll try to make something out of squirrels. but most of them I just I stick them in the freezer, and then she eats them either over the molt or during the season, because eventually you run out of room in your freezer because squirrels take up a lot of space.
Somebody was asking if you've run across a lot of female falconers.
They are definitely in the minority, which is kind of funny, because when you're in the beginning stages, you're kind of meeting up with a bunch of strange men in tents and in the middle of the woods. You kind of just gotta take your chances, But there are some, and there's actually, like, on Facebook, we have our own Facebook group, the Lady Hawkers group, and it's kind of great because you get away from because some of the guys can be a little bit, I don't know, they get like that macho, like, oh, if you're not out hawking 8 days a week and catching 3 squirrels a day, you're not a real falconer. And, so people feel a little bit more comfortable sharing things in the women's group.
So let's see, a couple people are asking about how this plays out over time, number of years, or what happens when it ages. I'm trying to combine some questions here.
Okay.
So what's the future for Thunder and you?
Well, like I was always, it kind of mostly depends on my life, things in my life, because, you're making decisions like, do I take a new bird? Like, of course I want her to go out into the world and make more Thunders, but two things, well, unfortunately, like that's not always what happens. A lot of birds die when you release them. So, there's always in your mind, you're releasing them and they're going off and making more birds and living a happy life. And that's not always the case. So there's that, but, then it's like, once you have a bird and they know the routine, you can kind of take them out and take them more places and do things with them. So if you have stuff going on where you don't have a lot of time, or you can only hunt certain days or certain places, it's a lot easier when you have an intermute bird, or one that knows the thing. So it all depends on that. I always thought, like, I would release her, and I don't want to keep her forever, but she's a good bird. So it's hard to release her.
All right. Do you always have the leg wraps on her and connected, or do they come off sometime? How does that equipment work?
Well, so these are anklets. Oh, she has one foot tucked in, right here. So they go around her ankle. So those always stay on. The jesses, which this is paracord. I have leather ones, but they kind of got wore out. So I'm using the paracord ones now. But these come out. So I change these out, and I have different ones that we use while hunting. And so she always, well, I say she always has jesses in, but she can pick them out. And, over the summer, she'll pick them out, and then she'll just have the anklets, and I'll have to kind of, if it's dark, I can just pick her up and put the jesses in. It's not a big deal. Some people fly their bird without jesses, but I'll say you always need the anklets, but somebody actually did come out with an anklet that you can pop on the bird. And so you could, like, fly them naked, but you're always going to probably have the transmitter on, or bells, you're going to want bells on the bird.
Yeah. Is there a limit to the number of years you can keep the bird, or
nope,
not?
You could keep them their entire, there's people that have red tails that are 25, 26 years old, still flying. They're few and far between. Most people keep the bird for a few, like, maybe 4 or 5 seasons, and then release it and get a new one, or they'll release the bird because, something else is not,
So a couple people are grappling with falconry, trying to do it. So I've got some tough questions for you. Mm-hmm. So how would you answer the question, the idea that the benefit is more for the person than the bird? And how does it benefit, just they're wrestling with how this plays out for the bird. What benefit does the bird have? Because it loses its life being wild is their point. Yeah.
Well, because a lot of those birds don't survive. There's something like 70 to 80% of the first year birds die. But that's also, like, and that's also an aside thing. You do falconry because you want to do falconry. So there's that too. So it's a little bit of both. I mean, you wouldn't do falconry if you didn't want if you didn't want to do it. So of course there is a benefit to the person. The benefit to the bird is they get fed, they get a nice place to live, you know, and then they make it, you know, through the toughest time of year, which is right now, they get to hone their skills. So like, you know, if you're really doing what you're supposed to do with falconry, you're putting game under the bird and they're getting better every time. They're allowed to fail. You know, you can miss a squirrel, you can miss the rabbit, and you're still going to get fed. That doesn't happen out in the wild. So they get better and better. And then when you do finally release them, they should be able to catch anything, no problem.
Yeah, she's really fascinated in the string coming from your ear down your chest.
Yeah.
And she thinks there could be something good with that. So, there's got some interest there, Chris. I want to thank you so much. We still have 84 people online. As you progress in falconry, do you have a dream bird you would love to catch?
I don't know. I mean, I really like red tails. I mean, I think like they're kind of the best of everything. And because you can trap your bird and then, you know, release them, you're not, you know, like if I went out and got a Harris hawk, that's pretty much making a commitment for the bird's life. You know, you can't release that bird. So, but with a red tail, you know, you can always get another red tail, and they're capable of doing, actually they're better than Harris hawks around here. Because you can fly them in 12-degree weather, and they're fine. And a Harris hawk, you can't do that with.
So is she really poofed now because she was sleeping? She was kind of
she was sleeping.
Yeah, because she's really poofed, it looks like. So somebody was asking here, can you remind us again of when you hunt and when you can't hunt legally? There's a few questions about that. Yeah. So
it's October 1st through March 31st. So it's about 6 months of the year is falconry season. And that's for hunting game species. Mm-hmm. So the caveat to that is like people that fly a kestrel can go after starlings all year round.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So you can have
protected.
Yeah. So a lot of people have a kestrel and a red tail, and they fly the red tail during the hunting season, and then they fly the kestrel in the summer.
But then you fly for her for exercise year round, of course.
Well, I usually, I have a perch that has, it's about like 5 feet tall, and it's got a ring, you know, it's a big sort of like ring on top. And so she feels pretty comfortable up there, but then when she baits off it, she has to fly 5 feet straight up to get to the top. So that's pretty good exercise for that. And then I keep her in the summer, I keep her free lofted. So she can fly around the mew and crash into things all she wants. But usually she's so fat by then, she doesn't really care to crash around too much.
Okay. So how long was it, the training from the capture to the first free flight?
For me, it took, I think it was like 6 weeks. And then,
oh, wow.
Yeah. It took, and then there was like a little bit of playing with her weight after that to, you know, just to make sure, but I think, I guess one could argue that the training is ongoing.
Right.
You know, because every time you do, they're so smart that, and they're almost so smart, they get superstitious sometimes. You know, something will happen and they'll be like, oh, that's a thing. It must happen every time. And then you're like, why is she doing that weird thing? And you're like, oh, well, the last time we did this, there was like food over there, you know, like, or something crazy. So
that's that whole predator pattern matching thing is really strong in her then, right? If a pattern happens, she repeats it.
Yeah. She does tend to, like, you know, I can do something and it can work to your favor and not in your favor for training. So like the thing is, like, when she's hungry and if she's anticipating food, she gets aggressive, because that's how you get food when you're a red-tailed hawk. You foot things. And so if you're doing something like, if every time I put her jesses on, I had food or something like that, my hand would be bloody, because she would anticipate that she's going to get food and she's going to foot my hand. So it's like, they're not trying to be mean to you. So sometimes when things like that happen with birds, you have to think, like, what are they thinking? Like, they're thinking, oh, there's food's coming. I gotta grab it. I gotta get it. Like, so, you know, there's some things you start doing things as a falconer, and then you forget, you're like, why do I do it in that order? Or why do I do that? And it's because the bird taught you, you know, exactly how to do it.
Has she ever caught a red squirrel?
No, only the flying squirrels and regular squirrels, and we still haven't caught a rabbit. I have a hunting spot now that has a lot of rabbits. So she got fur on one the other day, and so, but so maybe she'll get one. But it's okay.
Here's another one. Are you still an apprentice? What are the levels and how do you get there?
So there's apprentice, general, and then a master falconer. So the apprentice, you have to be an apprentice for at least 2 years. You have to have had a bird for at least 4 months out of those years and be flying that bird. And then to move on to general, you have to have your sponsor has to kind of sign off on it saying that you should move up. And another falconer who's been out with you in the field has to write a letter on your behalf saying that, you're doing the right thing. And stuff. So once that, if you've met all those requirements, then you move on to general. And the good thing about being a general, there's a poop coming.
And there's a poop.
Oh, that was a really big one too. Yeah. So, but it wasn't on the hardwood, so it's okay. But yeah, so there's apprentice, general, and master. And as a general, you can have 3 birds, and you can have other species other than a red tail and kestrel. And then as a master, you can have like 13 birds, and you can do abatement. You can do abatement as an apprentice or a general, but you have to be under a master or something. So there's some little things that happen along the way, but a lot of people just kind of like get to general and, would you have time to fly more than 3 birds, So
abatement as in use the bird to harass other birds away from somewhere like an airport?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like airports, garbage dumps. I have a friend that works at like a landfill upstate.
Right.
So they're usually using falcons for that or Harris. Like I've seen Harris hawks be used at like on the beach for seagulls and stuff. But
so Margaret was asking, do the hawks ever attack you while training them? I think you answered that. They might foot you by accident or
by accident or on purpose. Actually, usually if they're footing you, it's on purpose. Like if they get frustrated or if you're flying them too low. So if you're hunting and their weight's too low, or sometimes, I don't know. Oh, she's watching. It's fascinated with this cord. I don't know what it is. They get frustrated, especially if they're not catching anything. And then, they'll come after your hat or, fly you. So, and then during the molt actually though, is when they're most aggressive. Cause they're using up a lot of energy and they're fat. So they're like, I don't have to tolerate you at all. So that's when you really kind of have to watch out. And usually you're just, least contact with the bird, feeding them. I feed her through a chute. And then if I have to move her, I just grab her at night. And she'll step up perfectly. Somebody was asking about veterinary care. Have you needed that? The checkups? What do you need? What do you do with that? I thankfully haven't needed that yet. So she, like most problem, like the biggest thing I think that had like squirrel bites are often the biggest thing. And she's gotten quite a few, but they haven't been too terrible. Like the squirrel can bite, they can get the tendon, and then the bird's out for the season. You have to splint the talon and everything like that. But thankfully we haven't had that. But usually, if they get a bad bite after a couple days of time off and, a little bit of medical care, it's good to know wildlife rehabbers though, because they're very useful for because there's some vets, a lot of vets won't treat hawks. I've heard there's a couple, so I know, but usually what like people know, this is why it's good to be in contact with other falconers, because especially if you have a specific problem with the bird, people will know who to go to, and it might be worth driving to go somewhere for the bird. But
let's see, we're gonna wrap up, folks, but just wanted to double check other questions here. This was really a marvelous treat. I think lots and lots of comments about your presentation and beautiful bird, great, fascinating to see. Such a great program. Great to meet Thunder. One of our high school birders. Wonderful presentation, he says. I agree. Great.